Hey guys, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be walking through the process of configuring a Databricks workspace to be able to access an Azure DataLake Storage Gen 2 account. So, let's get right to it. All right, so we are logged into the Azure portal now, and as we can see right here, for my current resources, I have a Databricks workspace and a Databricks key vault. So, our goal for today is we want to ensure that our Databricks workspace can access a Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 account here. Now, there are multiple different ways that your workspace can actually access that account. You can access it by using storage access keys. You can access it via the Unity catalog, or you can access it using Azure AD service principal. So for our demo purposes here, we are going to utilize the service principal option here. So the first thing that I want to do is I need to create the service principal here. So I'm going to go out here to Azure AD, and then I will come into app registrations here, and then I'm going to create a new registration. And for my application, I will just call it Databricks SP for service principal, and then I will stick with the single tenant option here. Then I will go ahead and register my application. Once the application is registered here, I need to make note of the application ID. So I'm just going to copy this, and then I'm going to paste this into Notepad over here so I can reference it later. And then I also want to make note of the directory ID as well. So I will copy that value once again and paste into my Notepad. Then the next thing that I want to do here is come down here to the search and secrets section right here. And then I want to create a new client secret here. So I will just give this a quick description. I will call this my client secret. And then I will choose this to expire in 90 days. And then once that is created, we're going to get the password for it right here listed under the value field. So I will just make a note of this value, and then I'll paste that into my Notepad as well so that I can reference that a little later on here. All right, so now the next thing that we need to do is we need to create our Data Lake storage account here. So I'm going to come down here to storage accounts. Now, by default, anytime that you create a Databricks workspace, it's going to create for you a managed resource group. And inside that managed resource group, you're going to have a storage account that also contains a data lake inside of here. But for our particular purpose here, we want to assume that we already have a existing data lake that we need to be able to access from inside of our workspace. So I will just create a new storage account here, and I will name my storage account Databricks Storage. And since that's already taken, I'll just add in a few numbers here. And then I'm going to put this in South Central US. I will change my redundancy option since I don't really need anything here. And then I want to come down to the Advanced tab, and I want to ensure that I enable this option right here to make this an actual data lake. Once that is done, I will just hit the review button, and then I will create my storage account. And then we'll give this just a few moments here to create. All right, so now that this is done, the next thing that I need to do now is I need to ensure that the service principal that we created has access to our brand new data lake. So once I am logged into my storage account here, I want to come down here to the access control section, and then I'm going to add a role assignment here. So the role that I want to grant here is going to be called the storage blob data contributor role. So I will just grant this one, and I'll just expand this here really quick just so you can see the full name of the role. So I'm going to choose this role here. And then for my actual members here, I want to choose the service principal that we created via the app registration. So select members here, Then I'm just going to search for Databricks SP. And here is my storage principal here. So I will select that user, review and assign. And everything should be good there now. Now the next thing that I want to do is, so for the password that we got for the service principal, I don't want to have to reference that inside of my notebook. So what I want to do now is store that actual value inside of my Azure Key Vault. So I'm going to jump into my Key Vault that I have here, my Databricks Key Vault. And then I'm going to come down here to the secrets section here. And I want to generate a new secret. For my upload option, I will leave this as manual. I'm going to give this a name, and I'll just call this Databricks SP secret. And then for the secret value here, we want to paste in that value that we received when we created the app registration. So I'll come back over to my notepad where I pasted that value at, and then I will grab it once more and I will enter that value here. And other than that, that is the only thing that I'm going to do here for right now. Now the next thing that we are going to need to do here is we are going to need to create a Databricks secret scope that can reference our key vault and this particular key. So to do this, I am just going to open up a new tab here, and I'm going to paste in a URL here that references my Databricks workspace. And then at the end here, there is a hashtag secrets/create scope. Now, one thing to note here that trips up a lot of people is this create scope right here is case sensitive. So if I was to change this uppercase S right here to a lowercase s and then try to go to this site, you'll see that all we get is a blank white page and we can't really do anything here. So make sure that you do indeed use an uppercase S here for create scope. Now, once this is pulled up here, we're going to create a new scope here. So I will just call this my secret scope. For the manage principal right here, basically what this means is what particular users do you want to have access to this particular scope. So do you only want the user that creates the actual scope, or do you want to grant access here to all users? So for our demo purposes, I would just choose the creator option right here. And then for the next section here for the Azure Key Vault, we need to pass in the DNS name for our Key Vault and our resource ID. So for my DNS name, I will just go ahead and paste this in here. And for my resource ID, in case you don't know where to get to this section, you can just go back to the Azure portal, go into your Key Vault, and then click on the properties section. And then you'll see the resource ID listed there. So since I already have my resource ID here, I will just go ahead and paste in my resource ID, and then I will create my secret scope. And it will go out and verify that this is actually valid. And if so, you'll get a message here that says that it has been added now. All right. So now that my scope is there, the next thing that I want to do is I want to create myself a brand new notebook that I can work with here. So I would just come down here to the workspace section. I'll come down here to the user section. And then I will expand my user right here. And actually I'm going to click on the create notebook section. And I will just call this my first notebook, and I will leave the default language as Python, and the cluster that I'll be utilizing this is the single user cluster that I have created. So I would just go ahead and create that, and since my cluster is not running right now, I will go ahead and start this up really quick. and we'll wait for a brief moment while this starts up. But while we kind of wait on that, the first thing that I want to put in my first cell right here is going to be a script that I'm going to get from the Microsoft Learn website, and I will post the link to this particular script in the description section for our video here. All right, so if we take a quick look at this script right here just to see what it's doing. So the first thing that we're doing here is we're going to define a variable here called the service credential, and then that will utilize the DB utils to actually go out and reference our scope that we created from inside of Databricks, and then it's going to reference our credential key that we actually have stored inside of our key vault. And then for the next part down here, we are just going to set some configuration options here for Spark, just to kind of tell it that we want to utilize OAuth. We're going to point this to our DataLake account here, and we are going to pass in the service principal ID here, which is going to be the application ID. So basically, this is going to tell this particular notebook to use this particular user when accessing the data lake. And then we're just going to pass in the credential information that we're going to pull back here by utilizing the DB utils option here. So I'll give this just a few more minutes here while we wait on our cluster here to start back up. So in the meanwhile, while we wait for the cluster to start here, I will go ahead and replace these values here with my specific environment values. So for the scope, we named our scope my secret scope. So I'll just replace this section here with my secret scope. And then for the service credential key, we named ours Databricks SP secret. So I'll populate that in here. And now I need to get the name for my storage account, and that should be Databricks Storage 555. So I'll just populate that in here everywhere where it is referencing our storage account details. And then 2 more places here. And let's see, what else are we missing? We need our application ID here. So I will go back to my notepad where I pasted our application ID. And I will input this here as well. And this should be everything that we need to populate here. I'm just giving it one more look over just to make sure we didn't miss anything in the script. And everything looks all good now. So as soon as our cluster is up and running, we should be able to run our cell right here and get a success message back. All right, so it looks like it is up and running now. So let's just go ahead and run our cell right here and make sure that everything executes successfully without any kind of issues. All right, and it looks like it worked just fine with no issues. So as of right now, our notebook now has access to our Data Lake storage account. So just to kind of test things out and to play around with it a little bit more, just to see what we can do here, I'm going to create a brand new data frame. And actually, let's take one quick step back really quick. And I'm going to jump back over into my portal here really quick. And then I'm going to come back into my storage account here. Then I'll come down to containers here. And I'm going to create a new container here. And for my new container, I'll just call this container stock data. And just to kind of simplify things, I'll change my access level here. And then inside of my stock data, I'm going to upload a CSV file here for us to kind of work with and play around with a little bit more. So I'm going to upload this Microsoft Stocks CSV file here. All right, so that is uploaded now. And let's see here, just so we can take a quick look at what this looks like here. We'll come over here to the edit section, and we can kind of see that it's just a list of the Microsoft stock open price high price, low close, adjusted close, and the volume for multiple dates from 2022. So that is what our text file looks like here. So I will come back over here into my notebook, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a brand new data frame that is going to use the spark.read call here to actually read our Microsoft CSV stock folder from our stock data container that we just created here. And then once I actually create that data frame, then I want to actually display that data frame as well. So let's just go ahead and kick this off and see if it works. And this is actually good that we got a error message here, because it gives us a chance to kind of dig into it a little bit more, just to kind of see what the particular issue was. And I can already see right here, based on the URL that is listed here, and then this little call right here for the directory ID lets me know that in the script here, I must have missed my directory ID somewhere. Yep, and here it is right here. So let me come back to my notepad really quick and get my directory ID, and then I will paste my directory ID right here, and then I will rerun this cell once more. All right, so that ran without issues. So now let's come back here and we can rerun this once more, and it should work this time without any issues here, and it looks like it is running. So we'll just give this just a brief moment here. All right, and just like that, we can see that we were able to create a brand new data frame, and then we were able to display that data frame. And the data frame contains the CSV data that we just previewed from inside of our data lake. So at this point, we know for sure now that our Databricks workspace is indeed able to go out to our data lake and reference data within our data lake. So we can do a lot more interesting things here as well. So I'll just create a new cell here. And now what I want to do is I'm going to take my data frame and I'm going to actually write my data frame out as a brand new table. And we will just call that table data frame table. So I'll click and run this. All right, so it looks like that completed successfully. So let's do a new command here, and I'm going to use the magic command here to convert to the SQL language. And then I'm just going to do a select all from data frame table. And we should be able to see our data now inside of this new table. And now what I want to do is I'm going to create a new database and a new table called stocks. So before I do that, let's say I am going to call my table market.stocks. So I'm going to say drop table if it exists market.stocks. I'm going to run that. Oh, and sorry, I need to once again specify my magic command here so that it knows that we're running the SQL language and not the default Python language, which is what we picked for this particular notebook. So I will rerun that once again, and that ran with no issues at all. So now I am going to create a new schema here, which is called market. And then I'm going to create a new table, which is called stocks. So here's my script for that. And I will just go ahead and execute that. And that ran just fine. So now that I have my market.stocks table, what I'm going to do now is use the copy into command so that I can copy data from my data lake location here into my market.stocks table here. And I'm going to specify that the file format is a CSV file, and for the format options, I want to ensure that the header is listed as true, because my CSV file does indeed include headers. So I would just go ahead and execute this statement, and that command ran successfully. So now I will just run one more statement here, select all from my brand new market.stocks table. And as we can see, all of my data is here inside of my market.stocks table. So even if I wanted to do actually let me do my %SQL and say a delete from market.stocks where, and we'll just say my date is equal to 2022 January, and what was my first date here? The 3rd. We'll say the 3rd. And I can execute this. And then if I come back here and run this cell once more, we should see that my data from the 3rd is no longer there. So, all right, guys, so this is just a quick example of one way that you can configure your Databricks workspace to connect to a Azure DataLake Gen 2 storage account. So make sure that you hit that like button and subscribe to my channel, because in a future video, we will be walking through how you can access your data lake utilizing the Unity catalog. Until next time, guys, peace.